before you get any rebate or incentive.
When I was talking to a couple members of EDAB, one of them had definitely said that good policy is having specificity in the economic development agreement, so being able to tie it to things you're going to for sure do. So for example, for our Sooner Mall scenario, it could be improving the play area and maybe partnering with the libraries to do the reading portion of it. But you would want that firmly outlined. And I did speak to Mr. Colwell earlier about where I'm at and some of the feedback we heard in the Downtowners meeting about making it an equitable process and not being forced to come behind him and have to, pass a higher bar. So I'm leaning towards actually having a retail incentives policy that is equitable so that other areas of Norman can also use the same process. And then also in talking with him, we recognize that for 2025, he said he's not going to hit that mark. And then depending on this anchor tenant coming in or not, that's still about 18 months, was my conversation with Attorney Walker about what realistic timeline there is for him to actually get those rebates. And so now we're in a scenario where we go from 5 years to 2 years where he can actually get anything. And so I was asking him, I know he doesn't love this idea because he's put so much work into this, but I also think he wants to be able to get something passed. And so he did indicate that he'd be willing to sit down again and, depending on what we come up with, reconsider or put things in writing that had been nebulous before. But anyways, I just wanted to talk about that, tying it to specific things that will be done.
Yeah, and my understanding, if it is, all about this anchor tenant, I think he said Tuesday night he anticipated an announcement in the last quarter of 26. And then he's told us previously that's about an 18-month construction process. And so you're really looking at a couple of years before it's open and generating the sales tax that would generate a significant rebate. If they could earn a rebate, if the stores, and probably we would see our sales tax overall going up in that scenario if everyone's just store starts performing and bringing in more sales tax dollars. But to get something significant, it probably will take filling an anchor spot or a large vacancy.
And council had the choice to, we could have requested that this incentive be tied to successful recruitment of this tenant or any other tenant. I know when I first met with them about it, my initial reaction was I don't want to tie this to you attracting any specific tenant. And I definitely don't want it to be an incentive to attract a tenant that would be viewed as a competition with an existing corporate entity we already have. And so I was pretty adamant about it not being attached to any specific attraction of a business, but we have the ability to do that. We could say we would only agree to this if you actually land that tenant.
Yeah,
now,
and
pushback from others as well. What if they're coming already to a different area of town? Why would we incentivize them to come to the mall if they were already probably maybe coming to another spot in Norman without an incentive? But we have that ability though to say we do want it to be attached to a specific thing, or in this case we were like, well, really just general public improvements to the mall. Yeah, which lifts up all the business.
I think
that's what I was thinking.
The hard thing, and there's certainly pros and cons to both, but if we want to identify the impact, it's easier to do with a store when you have some sales data and things you can use and you can make some pretty informed assumptions. But when we're talking about just general improvement to the mall, which
right.
we know will improve the mall, but it's harder to predict.
What do you quantify that?
How do you quantify what that does for it?
I assume a nicer public facing areas, nicer restrooms, I assume helps all the businesses in the mall.
Yeah.
Overall, but yeah,
To
how
what
do we
amount,
quantify
yeah.
what is that impact?
And we're still pushing for a better food court. So,
Well, Councilmember Hinkle.
Yeah, that was kind of my thought about not tying it to a specific tenant, because ideally I would like to see other parts of Norman, whether that's individual businesses or bid districts or anything like that, be able to apply for this and not have it be contingent on them bringing in a tenant. Like if they were just gonna make things better and bring sales up that way, that would be fine, but I definitely wouldn't want it to rely upon being a tenant. But the mall didn't bring this to us as part of an economic development agreement. They just brought us this plan outside of that. We've put it into that box right
Well,
now.
they brought it to us just as a proposal. They weren't aware we had this economic development incentives policy, which, as I've said, several times, doesn't apply to retail, wasn't designed for retail. We've tried to just do our due diligence on it and bring it forward to you guys in the form that you guys have been discussing with the mall over the last year.
and honestly, that conversation gave us the reason to start doing homework to recognize what other metro cities do in similar circumstances.
Yeah, but I want to ask about this one, number 8, because this is a very similar kind of package. Is this the incentive over 10 years, maximum of $2 million? Is that a maximum of $2 million per year?
No, 2 million
$2
total.
million total? And that's actually to renovate the parcel, not to improve common areas.
Right. Bonmar purchased that Sears parcel and constructed their.
And what we have recognized is there are a handful of tenants, Costco, Cabela's, for example, that if a Costco or a Cabela's knocks on your door and says, hey, we're thinking about building in your fair city, here's the incentive we require. And it is a take it or leave it kind of a scenario, because they will gladly go next door, where you'll find a willing agency to make the deal. So you'll see some of those retailers in Oklahoma City's offerings, and those are similar deals to what you would actually see coast to coast.
And that's what I'm recognizing with these things. Like I think, especially Moore's List, those have had a positive impact. I don't go to the outlet mall. It's like might as well be in China for me. Quail Springs, Cabela's, Costco, those are all large retailers that bring a benefit, but they came directly to the city to ask for a lot more than what a common area update for a 50-year-old tenant is asking. I mean, this is a retail incentive. This isn't a rebate. They're gonna get this whether they do anything or not we gotta generate $20 million to be able to get $300,000 back. So this is really coming off the top of the cup versus something that is,
This one looks like will come out to 200,000. So a maximum of $2 million over 10 years.
200,000 a year.
So it's a little bit less than ours, but
that's
that
just, that's
documentation of
actually,
additional, per year.
that's actually to build out
Right.
the Sears parcel. That's
And we
not to
require
update the common areas.
Documentation
So what
of
we're looking at with
additional
the rebate is a rebate to update the common areas, not to build out a parcel for a potential new tenant. That's not what the proposal is.
And they require, and there's a documentation of additional jobs over what Sears employed. That's interesting.
Yeah, if you look at each of these, although they have the policy and certain things they need to analyze it and look at, they are catered to this particular situation, So the Oklahoma City Outlets one was the most interesting one to me, because they first did that in 2008 when it was coming in to be built. They knew it was going to generate a lot of sales tax revenue. They assumed 50% of that would be new. The city contributed some public infrastructure, and then they reimbursed them for their marketing up to a certain amount.
Is this all like the after result too? Do we know anything about how
Well,
these deals worked out?
Yeah, I don't have data on that. I can see if they've got that in Oklahoma City. I will say that Oklahoma City Outlets, they came back in 2021 and did it again. They didn't do it for as long of a term. They just did 5 years and a little less money. But By then, it had already been built, and they were just recognizing, I think, that the pandemic had a pretty big impact, and so they reimbursed for regional marketing expenses.
And more, I have to wonder, if they overextended themselves because, they had to ask their voters for a 1% tax increase, which failed. They're struggling to pay the bills anymore right now. They don't have any money.
But again, Moore gave that money up front,
Right.
not as a rebate.
I know just incentivizing those businesses, though, hasn't resulted in a budget windfall for them.
More typically will do theirs over 5 years, and they have you hit some sales tax targets to achieve
And
the,
we got a bunch of the businesses, because I saw Paul Wilson or someone complaining about it, but we got a bunch of those, like in the original University North Park, there were no direct incentives to allure a specific business that I recall. It was all public improvements and higher standard of architecture, and that will lure in the higher end retail. But so we've got a bunch of that corporate chain stuff that other towns have had to heavily incentivize to try to get, and we haven't had to. Even
yeah,
if
I
it's having to
mean, we did a lot
incentivize
in public
heavily.
improvements, I think, that benefited that area. And that was the largest part of the city's contribution. We did have the lifestyle center incentives, town center incentives later, but,
Similar, making the general area nicer
yeah, and
and
you'll
trying
see
to
that in
attract
some of these
instead of
where,
focusing on one single.
yeah, the city's focusing on public improvements that benefit the property.
That's kind of what the mall is. Public improvements would benefit the entire property instead of one
Yeah.
single.
They're private, but
Right.
certainly accessible to the public, and
That's where I kind of get into it too, is like, it is a private property, but it's for 50 years been a public gathering place for, I mean, I guess at any time they could say don't come in, but I mean, we can close the park at any time too, right? So that's where it's been like, it's a private, but it's functions and feels like a public place for so many ways. But anyway, Councilmember Grant.
Yes, two things. One, to that point, in talking with one of our newer EDAB members, it is accessible to people who are low income. And this particular person was talking about being a single parent at the time and being able to take their child to the play area. And I recognize that not everybody can pay for the play pit or Gymboree or any of those things. Sure, they have access to rec centers and whatnot too, but it's dependent on what your kid wants to do. And then you have seniors who do walking during the day there or the morning, and that's another instance of like adult wellness education center, or the Y may not be accessible to everyone. And then thinking about the improvements to the bathroom, there's a nurse, there's benefit to everybody in improving those. But I also wanted to circle back to these retail incentives and just remind folks that some of these deals didn't necessarily mean that if we had done this as Norman, we would get these things. I'm thinking of the Warren Theater and Costco. And I also will not name this store, but they've been interested in us, but because of ODOT, they're not going to set up shop here anytime soon. So I think retail incentives are part of the picture, but also is it a good fit for the site that people are interested in. So
and I don't think they'll even talk to you if they don't have the demographics. So that's always the biggest piece.
Councilmember Gansberry and then Bruce.
Yeah, on the paper that was supplied with all the other things around us and stuff, like we said, that's all upfront money and everything like that, and that's upfront money to get this person in your town and everything like that. It's not a rebate to maybe or maybe not spend it in certain areas of the mall or not. It's only the Sears Inn gonna be the one getting all the remodeled stuff in the bathrooms and everything like that when a big business comes in. The big business that was mentioned online, I don't know if he's said anything here or there of what it was or what, agreed to it or not and everything like that. But, that big business that it could possibly be out there in the world and everything like that. I still don't see where the cost of the incentive that we get that in return. I feel like, especially if there's certain big stores that went in there. We lose 2 of our business instantly that are currently in the mall because of it. We also heard this week that we're losing our cookie company in the mall. You know, so if they thought that brighter things were coming, they've been there forever, you think they would have stuck it out for the brighter things are coming kind of aspect.
They company-wide.
Yeah, but, still.
Has nothing to do with Sooner Mall.
Yeah, but still, another store in the mall closing and going out of business. You know, it still is that, you know. So I just don't see where 100% rebate makes sense, especially if it hurts that other person or different people in multiple businesses within the town also. And when we lose even more taxes from those places because they took a hit of 10 to 12% on average when that company comes into town, you know.
Councilman Bruce?
It's definitely a community space. You know, I've lived in Ward 3 for 23 years, and it's definitely a community space, not only for children, youth, but also seniors, people to shop. I don't know how long it's been since Ward 3 has received any type of economic incentive in that area. I have no idea if there has been one in the past. I don't know, compared to other wards.
We don't really do an economic incentives. We haven't really done them
TIF.
through the TIF. Yes, there aren't areas in Ward 3 that are, that qualify, but we do a lot of public improvements in areas.
What I'm trying to say, whether it's TIF, which I know most of Ward 3 doesn't qualify for, not all of it, but any type of incentive like this, I don't know of any past history associated with it, with Ward 3. I really don't. There may be something out there, but I don't know. Sears, how long has Sears been closed?
25
years.
You'll need to unlock your iPad first.
Talking to me now.
I think it
They say they don't
was
listen to
midway
you.
through 2018 or 2019.
It's been sitting vacant for quite a while. The thing I don't want to happen is what's happened when it's a crossroads.
Yeah.
I guess we're kind of at a crossroads here in Norman, right? So it's a major thoroughfare, right? It's a major thoroughfare, at least coming out of Ward 3, right? Coming to Ward 3. I would hate to see the property degrade any more than what it is as far as visually. Now, it has gotten a little better over the last probably 3 years, but there was a time when it was pretty rough. But when I think of an incentive, I think it's great having a performance-based incentive. There's one on there now associated with sales, increasing sales over time compared to a 3 years average. That average it's froze. It's not a moving average. We could probably adjust that so a little bit, but that's something to consider. But also I think about, hey, what's really important to me is that capital investment increasing over previous years. I don't want them to go down the ownership to not increase his capital investment over a period of time. So in my mind, it's almost a conditional thing. The first part is increase your retail sales, which builds your pool, and that pool is paid out based upon how much you expend in capital expenditures, as long as it's more than the previous year or previous average. Yeah. Does that make sense?
So Councilmember Bruce, we might describe that as a maintenance of effort on their part so that we just don't substitute. We want to add to,
Yes.
not replace.
I care about that corridor. I care about looking like Norman should look, maintained. I want to see the mall successful. I want more than one anchor, maybe 3. That'd be really nice. But I just don't want to see this go the way of Crossroads, where it degraded, failed, no early involvement.
The case of Heritage Park Mall in Midwest City is probably even more of a
Scary.
because they've taken it over because of the problems they were dealing with it being abandoned for 10 years. And I think there have been infrastructure improvements. Main Street's been widened and improved in front of the mall. 36th Avenue's been redone and widened next to the mall. Things like that, and that's the case for most wards. And I think there's an impression, Norman, too, that we have a long history of using TIFs in Norman, but really Campus Corner, the original UMP, Center City, and now the Entertainment District. We've got four in the last 20 or so years and none before that. So we haven't really used it a lot in Norman as far as that goes. And then like you mentioned, there's parts like Ward 3, the mall, Edno Parkway are not in an enterprise zone. They're not in a grandfathered enterprise zone, so they don't qualify for a TIF. Ward 3, like Ward 2 and Ward 4, has completely developed out pretty much. And now you're looking at mostly redevelopment and infill and things like that going on. But I have that same concern about the mall property having multiple years of slightly negative downtrend, and if that continues, what happens? Right now, we bring in almost $2 million a year in sales tax revenue from the mall property. If the mall were to continue to decline, that's a guarantee that we'll lose potentially $2 million a year in sales tax revenue, because there's no guarantee that that revenue will go back into the rest of Norman. I don't know how much of the revenue from the mall is coming from people who only come to Norman to shop at the mall. And if the mall wasn't there, how many of them would then go to Edno Parkway or UNP or downtown or wherever? Or would they just not be shopping here anymore if the mall wasn't here? And so that's one of my main concerns is, can we prevent that from happening by stepping in and doing something local like this? And that's really been why I've been interested in entertaining it for sure is there something local we can do to keep that from happening to that property? And if they have to generate new revenue above what they're currently bringing in to get anything, that seems like a really good backstop. But there's additional things I know, but that was a big important thing to me was they would have to increase sales of the property to get anything that we can't afford from a sales tax standpoint, general fund standpoint. We can't afford to give them an incentive if the mall were to continue losing revenue. So that's just some of what I've been thinking. Councilor Bruce, if you want to follow up.
Yeah, I just want to echo that I think the retail aspect of it, as far as the performance metric, I think it's great, man. You got to increase your sales to have this pool. Now, to cap that off, to earn part of that pool, you have to have a one-for-one relationship or something, dollar for dollar, that I want you to increase your capital expenditures in order to capture dollar for dollar that pool that may be out there, whether it's 300,000 or 200,000 or 150,000, based upon their sales, that they've spent more than the preceding years.
Councilor Hinkle.
I think this is getting lumped into one item, and it's really not one item. We're talking about a rebate for the mall and for the common areas. And the proposed anchor tenant in Sears is not contingent on this rebate or not. So even if we do this rebate and the proposed anchor tenant doesn't come, that's still more appealing to the next person that's looked at it because we've made these updates and contributed to the mall. Whatever's going in there now isn't the first thing that's looked at going there. There's been 6, I was gonna say at least 8 that I knew of. So again, we're trying to lump this in saying that if we create a tenant that takes away from another part, I don't think that that's fair to the project that we're looking at.
And even to that point, if they don't secure the tenant, they still have to increase their sales tax by $13 million a year to qualify for the max incentive. So they are gonna, by virtue of the whole program, they have to increase dramatically where they performed pre-COVID even. I'll be honest, to me, it's a no-brainer, and I can't believe that we've spent like 5 meetings talking about this, but it must be the seat I'm sitting in, so.
Kim, Councilor Gulacich.
I just wanted to say I really liked what you said, and that has been a concern of mine as well. It just seems risky to me. But talking about that it could maybe take away from another business is also a concern of mine. Because I researched the business that they're saying it could, I mean, even was put on Facebook that it was going to be. And so, and it's and correct me if I'm wrong, but it is if it is that place, it would be a place of like you go in and like play and do things and play sports and things like that. So that made me think of, again, Heyday. So to me, I was like, here we are. Like, I really love Heyday, so I'm always going to speak up for them because we got main event. And so I feel like that's probably taken away from Heyday. And then if we get this, they're hit again. And so I just don't want them to go under. I love the mall. I take my kids there. We play in the play area. So I don't want it to go away, but also I don't want Heyday to go away. So it's just little things like that I'm torn on.
Councilmember Kirby.
Kind of on the same event, it's going to affect multiple businesses around. It's not something that we don't already have. Likewise, businesses. I'm hard because it's not a 50-50 tax deal. It's like 100%. And then, you know, as Councilman Bruce brought up, is they want to keep their area looking good. Well, you know, you can go to Rock Creek and Porter, Robinson and Porter, Lindsay and 24th, Alameda and 24th, half of Ward 2 down Lindsay Street. All these businesses have always struggled for the last 50, 60 years. They come and they go and they do it on their own. We don't bail them out. We don't give them huge incentives. And it seems like every time, speaking for my ward, but also noticing Ward 2, 6, 7, 1, we're always the ones who don't get nothing. I mean, y'all got the brand new art center over there off of Indian Hills and 36 or whatever that could have went over here near Irving. Really needed it. It's easier for people to get back and forth across town.
That's not a city building. That's a Norman Public
What I'm
School.
getting at is all the east side, anything east of the railroad tracks don't get the same offers that west of the railroad track get. And if we're going to be, and as a town, we're suffering. So my biggest thing is we're giving away tax incentives to billionaires, why we have companies here on every aspect in this town that are private owned, local residents. And it seems like when you're a local owned business, we will never help them as a city. Maybe we do, and maybe I just don't see it. But it seems like we help people who are coming in to put out our local owned business more than we do our locals.
Councilmember Gansberry.
Talking again about looking at not other stores or any other businesses other than the mall entity as itself and everything. And like I've said before, you know, I'm really am thankful for the landlord that's there and everything for that facility, because they have invested almost $5 million in the last 3 to 4 years into that place, you know, to keep everything up and going. But once again, that's what a landlord's supposed to do for his tenant. You know, they pay rent for a reason. They expect it to be upkept while doing that. If there's an issue with not being able to upkeep the place and everything like that, maybe it's an issue with people aren't paying enough rent that's there. But at the end of the day, we're going to ask our Norman business owners in that store to send in their sales tax only to come around and go back in this store to their landlord. And to me, that's just weird that the landlord is getting cuts all the way around this equation and everything like that. And it just doesn't seem right, you know, so.
Councilmember Grant.
To those with concerns, would you be supportive of a equitable retail rebate policy that other businesses throughout Norman could also apply to and have him go through this process? I'm seeing Councilmember Blodgett nod yes.
Is it going to be for more than 50% of our sales taxes? Because with us being 4 fire stations and so many fire and police short, no. Unless, if it's going to take 100% sales taxes, I will never support it.
To clarify, because I can see Councilmember Hinkle, so it would be 100% on top of what it already gets. And they have dedicated funding, or, you know, transit fund, PS public safety sales tax, Norman Ford, it's a capital improvements, is also part of those dedicated funds. So those are not a part of the 100%, but in developing a retail policy, we could outline what our preference is.
But understanding that if you do that, it's fine that all those other things are getting their taxes, but our payroll and everything else is not getting any taxes in it. If every business's town is getting,
It's not getting anything now
100%.
on an empty shell of a box either.
I would just say that, again, it's the base that we're getting, so it's not like we would see a reduction in the general fund. And that if we develop a retail policy that's equitable for all businesses, it would be anything new that they generate for a set length of time, excluding
But
the
something like that,
dedicated funds.
I wouldn't personally be able to commit to that until we see the next council and see where their mindset's on it also.
I understand
Because that will affect their whole entire terms.
But I was just curious if we do this process, if we might get to a place where we could support that type of tool. I would just say, structurally speaking, not a lot of tools we have. We have TIFs, we have rebates. And mentioned in the downtowners meeting was also that the county does an ad valorem rebate, which I would talk with City Attorney Walker about, just going down that rabbit hole, because we could point people in that direction if city funds are not enough, and they could approach the county about that. But before we go down this path, and I do think another council may also be of a similar mindset, that there is an advantage to having these tools. It's
I know,
just
but I'm
how
just
they're
saying that
used.
tonight's about Sooner Mall, and you're talking about incentivizing other things and stuff like that, so that needs to be a different discussion and everything else for that.
As I mentioned at the beginning of this meeting, I did speak to Derek Colwell about
I understand
this.
that, but this is about Sooner Mall, not
Councilmember
about that stuff.
Gettysburg, please just let Councilmember go continue.
So, anyways, I'm kind of hearing that, yes, going down this path, we could explore it and potentially reach a consensus on whether or not we're going to do this, because right now I'm not hearing it.
Shame.
Because it would mean that the mall may want to be a part of that new policy if that is developed. Councilmember Bruce.
Once again, I'm going to echo, I love to see performance metrics on earning. I mean, to perform above this level to earn something. I love to have 2 or 3 performance metrics. That's great. One is, I can do that really easy. 2 makes it a little more difficult. So, but ouch on opportunity costs. I agree as far as empty spaces everywhere. Everywhere you see empty spaces, man, the opportunity cost associated with empty space, not only the owner, but also the city. When I think, well, there's missed opportunities when it comes to revenue related to not only the owner, but the city.
Downtown, you have them on Campus Corner, you have them
Yeah.
everywhere.
And, opportunity costs. And so I feel like anything we can do as a body to encourage business and development, not all the time, most of the time, is a good thing. And I would hate to miss this opportunity because it's not 100%. Yeah, I know you're thinking 100%. Well, it's 2.3% of the sales tax.
Got a full point.
Again, I've got to beat my past performance.
It doesn't exist right now.
Yeah, and then if I really care about capital improvements, I'll match you dollar for dollar above your previous year's baseline. So there's 2 performance metrics. Slam on that. It's like, okay, I've got to perform. Now, we have the clawback, or not clawback, when you, businesses move, they're excluded from the computation. Now, with any business environment, you're going to get situations where, certain customers are going to shift. They're going to shift their spending. Not that a business move, but I shifted my spending. That's competition. That's competition. What would I do to earn that customer back? What do I do? So, once again, it's a major corridor. I would hate to sit empty for 20 years. How long is the mall on 240 sit empty for, past? That would be a crime.
To Councilmember Bruce's point, when we recognize your neighboring agencies are competing against you for opportunities, when a retailer recognizes Norman as a possible place, they also recognize, well, Moore's just right across the street. So they will be looking for those incentives, if a business locates in a neighboring jurisdiction, it has the same impact on Norman retailers as it would have had it located on our side of Indian Hills. So the competition's happening, and you can see that more in Oklahoma City are doing battle, and we have not yet entered that competition. So just something to keep in mind.
Can I just say one more thing? I hope that future councils do support the type of mechanism. Obviously it'll be after my time, but I think it's a great idea. This is something that I think would make common areas for business districts just exceptional. To the same point that you have, to where we're competing with everybody that's competing with us, not just for the mall, but for downtown, for Campus Corner, for anybody who wants to organize and make the same type of request. I think it's a benefit. But where we are now, we have a backstop of, if they don't perform, they don't get anything, and it's a rebate. It's not an incentive up front. So I'll leave it at that.
Interesting factor here, even though this again isn't related to that retailer, is that Moore already has that retailer.
A flavor of it.
Right.
A lesser flavor.
Which they paid a pretty hefty incentive to get apparently.
And we can track leakage from Norman to that retailer.
Yeah.
And we see it. So you can stop the leakage and keep all those dollars.
Yet UNP does twice the visitors and revenue as 19th Street and didn't incentivize a single business to be there.
And he said himself that they're looking at the mall and UMP
Right.
for this business.
And also, again, we got to separate the question that we're talking about from the anchor tenant that's being potentially proposed. Because even if that anchor tenant doesn't come, any updates that we help them make will benefit whatever does go there in the future.
And because we decided not to tie it to that. Councilor Blodgett.
That was it.
Mayor, can somebody else speak for just a
We don't
second?
take public comment in this one, this meeting unfortunately, but there will be a public hearing next week, potentially. If this is still on the
It's
agenda.
postponed to a date certain, so it will be on your agenda next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday. I do, the conversation that Councilor Grant had with the mall manager, that they're already past the year one, so now it's a 4-year deal, like you mentioned, and I don't know, there are the questions about an application, about some of the standard stuff. And if we do approve this for the mall, are we gonna come in and, I say the next council, so anything could happen, but come in and change the policy to where is harder for the next batch to come in, where the mall gets it approved by this on-the-fly policy that didn't really exist to address this request. And then we change it to address the rest of the city, and the steps are different. Or maybe we create a higher bar, or maybe it's lower, I don't know. And then we made the mall jump through a higher hoop than we made everybody else jump through, so. I'm interested, I'm gonna follow up with him too on that conversation about that, but I do wanna have a actual policy in place so we can avoid this happening again, where it's clear that, because there were questions in the downtowners about how would that even work for downtown? I mean, downtown buildings are all owned by individual people, and some of them own a bunch of them. Would an incentive just go to the building owner and not the businesses downtown? Yes.
Or
And
to the
so
bid.
we need to make a policy that makes that clear, that is it going to the business owners directly, or is it going to the building owner? Because there are property owners downtown that have raised their rent in the last few years, for sure. We've heard businesses complain about that. Campus Corner, for sure, has seen increased rents and different interests at play there, but that's the question too, because one of it was, I asked Daryl, could we draw the downtown district and apply the mall rebate formula to the downtown and see what would that look like? And then if that were distributed amongst every business in that district, what would that look like for each business? Or if just the EDO, that one block, wanted to apply for it, what would that look like? And who would get it? Would it be the majority property owner on that block, or would each individual business get it? So that's part of that policy that I definitely want to work on. And whether it's 50% or 100% or whatever, that's definitely up for debate. But I think we need to have a policy about incentives for retail, and how that includes something like the mall that's like a quasi-public. And if we're saying it's an enclosed building and we're wanting you to make public-facing improvements to it, what is that? What does that mean?
Well, and as
'Cause
council.
like we said, we make improvements to Main Street, Gray Street, Porter. We've invested millions of dollars in public infrastructure, which helps businesses downtown and Campus Corner. But none of those businesses got, a new sidewalk doesn't guarantee that it's gonna improve their business, right? So,
They get fire lines, which means they can put sprinklers in them at
That's
very
right.
reduced costs.
and
So,
they didn't have to pay for that.
Council will recall our conversation when there was interest by some of the business owners to establish a business improvement district, which we saw great value just in terms of having an entity. Now it's a body. And we talked about, well, there are 61 businesses in the mall. Are there 61 businesses in downtown? Plus or minus, that the vehicle, it would be hard for maybe a small retailer. What could I invest in that would grow my sales big enough to even qualify for a rebate versus as a business improvement district? Yep, we could track that, and through combined effort, organization, how do you choose to market yourself? We see marketing as being a huge component that business improvement districts can be used for marketing that destination, that we can track it. And Mr. Mercer, our finance director, has the ability to see retail sales by mailbox going right down Main Street to say, yes, their sales for this district went up by $13 million. And you